In the aftermath of that first epic 33-engine static fire on SpaceX's new Starship pad last week, we all wanted to know how it held up. Was it damaged as some thought, or are we still on track for Flight 12? Well, SpaceX just hours ago released a truckload of great insights on all this with astounding video, and I tell you, watching this through is absolutely breathtaking. Along with that, an absolutely epic mission for New Glenn, until not so much. We've got so much packed into this one actually. Neat new stuff from Artemis II, Vast dropping a load of great new visions for the future. Then we have Rocket Lab kicking ever more goals, and huge excitement with the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Hey, Marcus House with you here, and after all that static fire action last week, the big question is, how are we looking for Flight 12? Well, let's start off at Massey's to check on the testing action from the Booster 18.3 test tank. This is one of the last testing runs that we have been waiting to see before Flight 12 because SpaceX needs to ensure the pressures of a fully loaded Starship sitting on top of the new integrated hot staging system holds up as expected with a nice margin for error. The ship skirt simulator ring and the blue compression cap along with its 20 outer rods were installed so that they could pick up where they left off. On Wednesday morning, we could just see that this was venting away on NSF's live cameras. At this distance, it was difficult to tell if or when they began the compression testing, but it was nice to see it frosty again. All the added actuators on the outside connecting to the grid fins and cap for torquing weren't yet hooked up for this test, but given that the test looked to have been successful, they proceeded to connect these over the next few days and were back to complete it just before exporting this video out. After last week's series of tests, which ultimately resulted in the first version 3 Super Heavy static fire using all 33 engines, we can see the ridge and flame buckets look virtually untouched from this distance, which is great to see. There were a lot of comments worried that there's a chunk of damage to the area because if you look closely at this view from NSF, you can clearly see debris raining down here in the water. Remember though that the speed of that exhaust will create heavy suction and throw all sorts of nearby debris up in the air. There was a little tape or something on the flame buckets in this view from above, but as far as we can see, there is no visible damage anywhere in the flame trench itself. Interestingly though, workers do seem to be giving the Deluge farm some attention and adding new hardware to this area. Luckily for us, SpaceX's newly released video from just hours ago included this terrific chunk of footage from that event. Check this out.
5, 4, 3, 2, mission. Wow.
Now listen to the delay when they actually hear those Raptors.
We kicked out early. All teams triage alerts, prepare for offload.
Today we aborted our second attempt of the B-19 full count static fire. We actually had another pad abort on the diverter. We made it through engine startup and then ultimately lost some of our sensors on one of the ramp manifolds. It basically said that the manifold pressure was lower than we believe that it probably was, and it kicked us out at T plus 1.88 seconds.
So yes, it makes sense that we have seen workers all over that Deluge area. The complexity of the new launch site and everything that they need to be confident at launch would be overwhelming. Interestingly, we also learned that the 10-engine static fire that came before this was more problematic than we had realised.
Abort.
We successfully lit all 10 engines. They were ramping up to power. Everything was looking good. Stage and engines combined. Some sort of sensor tripped, and from there we command a fast shutdown.
It was a hard one, and especially since we had to drop all the engines afterward.
We saw some data right after static fire that showed about half the engines had what looked like mechanical damage, basically as a result of the really fast shutdown. So we brought the booster back to Mega Bay. We then decided to remove all 10 engines from the booster so that we could troubleshoot and understand what's going on those 10 while still making progress on B-19 by backfilling engines from B-20.
Yes, there is more troubleshooting to be done on the booster side, but check out the new footage released from the ship static fire test a little under 2 weeks ago. Glorious views of the new setup at Massey's here as they started that countdown. The quality of all of this static fire footage blows my mind, and of course we end up with the tease of the upcoming Flight 12, and man, we can't wait. You want to check out the full video because it's amazing. We've got never before seen views of the pad damage after that concrete tornado in Flight 1 years ago. We have Ship 36's explosion from June last year. Ouch. Then we have new shots of the rupture of Booster 18 in November last year at Massey's.
When we were pressing the nitrogen system, we had an explosion that took out the rocket, and thankfully we had designed that test to be safe. If something like that happened, we did not have propellants or reactive things on the vehicle, and so the test site incurred very little damage, and of course nobody was hurt in the incident.
Indeed, we are going to be studying views from this video for months, and bravo SpaceX for sharing all of this. Heading over to the production site, we have another brand new ship to focus on with everything else. Tuning into Avid Space's live cameras, we could see the PEZ installation jib roll out and into Megabay 2 with a Starlink dispenser equipped. This told us that the first sections for Ship 41 were just around the corner. It was lifted into the installation stand, and lo and behold, a nose cone and forward dome section rolled out a few days later. Now, this means there are now 3 upper stage Starships in Megabay 2, and if all goes well, this new Ship 41 will launch with Flight 14. I think it's pretty inspiring to peer into the future and wonder about the missions that we will see with all these upcoming vehicles. I mean, we could be looking at the first ship that SpaceX not only intends on going orbital with, finally, but perhaps even catching with a launch tower for the first time. We also had Booster 20's forward section roll into Megabay 1 on Thursday, which Sean snapped before it left the ring yard. Sadly, our views into the Megabays are being cut off more as the days continue to tick by, with cladding now appearing all over the Gigabay. Already we are watching the third level of that grow, and this is where we are at just this week. These views that we can still pick up through the Gigabay are not going to exist for much longer. They have started installing the rails either side of the front doors where that will eventually slide up and down. With that, as soon as those doors go in at the back of the Gigabay and they join the monstrous construction to the Star Factory, the ability to track vehicle sections will be almost zero. In fact, we are really only going to know the existence of a booster or ship when it is rolling out for the first time, but fear not, while awesome ground photos are picking up a little of the ship builds behind, that is soon going to be replaced by much more ship movement on the highway, static fires, and the all-important flight action. Now, while we are here at the Star Factory, check this out. The large angled glass window on the front of the factory has been completely removed, and it is now covered with cladding to match the rest, so even our views through that window have been limited. We can still see the nose cones along the front of the factory, but not much other than that. Thanks to RGV aerial photography though, we have got some neat insights from above. You may recall me mentioning that this delivery of brand new pipes looks an awful lot like those which would make up both halves of the flame buckets. Well, more of those have turned up, and they seem to come pre-welded together in these small groups, presumably for faster assembly when the time comes. We can even see one of the larger manifolds that goes on the bunker side of the launch mount sitting on the back of a trailer here before being unloaded. Now there is a lot more to come too, because I'm happy to confirm that sections for another launch mount have started turning up at the port. Not only that, we can see them rolling right in thanks to Sean here, who has been out to capture all this. As always, thanks for being subscribed so we get to be out there for you. Now, all of this of course is for the new launch mount destined for Pad 1. Chrome Kiwi has a neat model here actually, and this gives you a good idea of where in the mount a section like this fits. Similar to previous deliveries at the port, SpaceX will, I suspect, store a chunk of hardware here and then move it down to the build site in batches during those low traffic hours. So if we're looking closer at Pad 1 at the launch site, there is a bunch to see. Before we dive into that though, a huge thanks to Delete Me for sponsoring today's video and helping make what we do here possible with the team. These days, it's just so easy to end up with your personal information out there on the internet for the taking. You can be doing everything right and some data breach may expose information of yours that seemed secure with a legitimate company at the time. Now, your name, address, phone number, even your family connections could be out there. That may not seem problematic until you realise it's all rapidly scooped up by data brokers and sold to the highest bidder. It's shady, a multi-billion-dollar industry, and one you've probably never even heard of. That's how those almost creepy accurate robocalls, scam texts and phishing emails find you. All it takes is the right combination of leaked details and you are a target. The good news though is that you can fight back. Delete Me is the service that I've used to clean up a lot of this data for over 2 years now. They find where your information is exposed across hundreds of sites and submit requests to get it removed. Not just once either, they do it regularly, and my dashboard and privacy report keep me updated on what they've found. I mean, if I understood the industry well enough, it might be possible to submit requests myself to remove some of it, but with hundreds of data broker sites out there, you really need to be an expert in the field to get stuck right into it. Delete Me handles it all behind the scenes, and they've even got a way to help you protect your entire family under the one account. You can set it all up and manage it for them, or even give them access via their own secure login and privacy settings. It's all managed from a clean, simple dashboard. So yeah, give it a try using my link joindeleteme.com/Marcus for a 20% discount on US consumer plans. The URL is also right there in the description for international plans too. Thank you, Delete Me. Okay, so looking into everything going on at Pad 1, we have a lot to catch up on. With all the hardware stacking up and the various stages of work going on, it's looking a little hectic right now. The formwork and rebar that had been laying behind the tower for the Drawworks bunker has now been sealed in with concrete. You may notice the embeds on top, and this is where SpaceX will mount the steel sections as they arrive. Sheet piles have continued to be driven into the ground, of course. The main ones for the trench and bunker are all these here, and some interesting additional ones on the west side. These are likely so that SpaceX can reinforce the Starship staging area. We also see more beside the commodities bunker too. Speaking of, they appear to be already staging a heap of sections for that in this large section of the land that has been cleared out in the new expansion. Certainly looks like they've been loving having all that new space to work with. Now there's a bunch of crane segments sitting here in this area too. This was the large crane used to lift Tower 2's new roof cap, but now it looks to be getting reconfigured to remove these old small methane tanks from the tank farm. You can see the blast wall behind them has already been completely broken out, in fact. Now, of course, SpaceX's propellant needs have increased dramatically, and they have gotten much better with efficiently using the space provided. Interestingly though, the two slightly larger tanks beside them may live here a little longer, and that is because these new embeds here look to support 2 more tanks of the same size. Moving across the road, they are still chugging away getting all the various areas of the hardware built up and installed for the air separation unit, where they will soon start producing their own liquid oxygen and nitrogen for launches. The electrical bunker, which has been living with Starhopper for months, has now been moved into its spot here on these pedestals. Formwork for the base of the cooling building beside it are now being installed too, and right over here they were raising a steel bunker surrounding the motors and compressors. Now the big news of the week was of course the third flight of New Glenn, but this time using the refurbished booster from the second flight with Never Tell Me the Odds. It was also the first time that New Glenn carried a commercial payload. Exciting, right? Well, not so fast, because we've got good news and bad news on this. Early Sunday morning, Blue Origin were ready to go at Launch Complex 36, and there it roared off the pad right before the golden hour of the day. Check out that beautiful blue exhaust coming from the 7 BE4 engines, using the methane there to push it ever faster out of the thick atmosphere. As I mentioned last week, the booster itself was being reused, but not the 7 engines themselves. Blue Origin instead chose to swap out the flight-proven ones for the new set on this flight. They've made several upgrades to the engines, but they are still aiming to reuse the previous flown set on a future mission. Anyway, the booster performed flawlessly. About 3 minutes and 9 seconds in, there was the glorious stage separation, and check out this shot of the twin BE-3U engines on the upper stage as the first stage there falls gracefully away. That is a magnificent view, and although the exhaust once the second stage fires up is pretty much invisible, that continued on its way to orbit. At this point, all eyes were on that first stage, which was soon screaming back downwards towards the recovery ship Jacqueline. It reignited its engines for the entry burn, although we didn't get much of a shot of that, into the denser atmosphere though, and check out the vapor cones coming off that aft. Engine ignition for the landing burn, and all three were firing away beautifully. The big question was, could New Glenn stick the second landing in a row with the same first stage? Sadly, we didn't get to see the altitude and speed information on screen here, so yeah, please do keep that in future Blue Origin because we love to nerd out over this stuff. After the cameras lost the view as it flew into the clouds, we didn't get to see much detail in the live stream, but there it was, seconds later standing tall on the ship. How about that? Luckily, Jeff Bezos did share a better view of the touchdown after the fact. It's pretty amazing that they have had so much success already with first stage recovery. This is where the news turns bad though. They ended the stream soon after, and we're not sure why they didn't want to share any more here, but when they signed off, everything was still going pretty much to plan. Not for much longer, it seems. An update from Dave Limp told us that during the second GS2 burn, one of the BE-3U engines didn't produce the needed thrust to reach the target orbit. The Bluebird 7 payload had been separated away and powered on fine, but as it was delivered into an off-nominal orbit, the mission was a bust. We don't yet know why the upper stage partially failed, but with the orbit far too low to sustain long-term operations for Bluebird 7, the satellite was soon deorbited. Blue Origin, of course, have immediately begun an anomaly investigation with the FAA and are working to return to flight as soon as possible. So yes, good luck with that investigation. Now we have got some intriguing Falcon 9 stuff this week too. First up, SpaceX launched the final GPS-3 satellite for the US Space Force in the early hours of Tuesday morning. Booster 1095 lifted off from Space Launch Complex 40 for this one, and with this launch being the 10th out of 10 GPS-3 units, the Space Force has completed their new generation of navigational satellites. The booster landed successfully on the drone ship, just read the instructions for its 7th time, and interestingly, we have just learned that this was the drone ship's last ever mission for Falcon 9 catches. I'll come back to that in a moment, but soon after a lengthy coast phase and a second minute-long burn of the second stage, we had deployment. At this point, the satellite is on its own to begin the process of raising its orbit, which takes about 10 days. It will then enter operational service with the other 9 in the constellation. Now, this also carried an optical cross-link laser communication demonstration for future GPS-3F satellites. Added to that, they even had a next-generation digital atomic clock to improve navigation precision even further. Other than that, just the 2 Starlink missions this week. Group 1722 on Sunday morning from Vandenberg Space Force Base with 25 in the stack. Only a young booster, number 1097 there, touching down for its 8th time on Of Course I Still Love You. Then it was Group 1714 away from the same pad on Wednesday evening, but this time with 1 less Starlink on board. Yeah, there was only 24 on this one, and I'm not sure why. Of Course I Still Love You must have done a speed run to be back out here again already to pick this one up, and there we have Booster 1100 touching down for landing number 5. So why was this the last Falcon 9 catch for the drone ship? Just read the instructions. Well, SpaceX is actually pooling all of the resources it can to push Starship progress to the East Coast. As you may recall, they halted Falcon 9 missions from Launch Complex 39A months ago anyway, and will only be using that Falcon Tower for Falcon Heavy at this point. Just Read the Instructions is actually going to join a new SpaceX ship to the fleet, You'll Thank Me Later. The two are now going to support Starship and Super Heavy transport operations, moving the vehicles from Starbase in Texas to the Cape. This means all Falcon 9 missions launching from Slick 40 are going to touch down on a shortfall of gravitas, and as always, Of Course I Still Love You will catch everything coming from Vandenberg Space Force Base. Keep in mind, from both sites, they can still mix in missions that can do the return to launch site anyway, but they are really pushing for Starship flights to take the bulk of Starlink version 3 satellites as soon as they can. With all that, we have a few more sweet insights dropped during the week on the Artemis II mission since its return. Reed Wiseman shared this view that he captured himself here using an iPhone. Down here, of course, we are used to watching the sun setting, but seeing an Earth set as they passed behind the moon is really astounding. If you go check out the full video and listen to the audio here, at the time you can hear Christina hammering on her Nikon camera to pick up loads of shots of the Earth set with a 400mm lens. From Reed's perspective, he could barely see the moon through the docking hatch window, but the iPhone was the perfect size to catch this, it seems. He had this on the 8x zoom setting, and I think it's neat to imagine us being up there filming this same shot. Along with that, this is a neat underwater photo taken by Navy divers right after the Orion splashed down. This is an important shot because the heat shield issue was one of the biggest discussion points following the first mission. Thankfully for Artemis II, NASA says that the initial inspections show the heat shield performed exactly as expected, with far less char loss than Artemis I, both in quantity and size. Remember, NASA used a steeper re-entry profile than they did on Artemis I, which is likely why we see this difference. It is worth noting, however, that for the next Orion spacecraft, the heat shield has already been modified. This should make it more robust for future missions, so there shouldn't be anything to worry about going forward. Now, it has been pretty wild seeing some of the images shared by VAST this past week. This came after they attended the 41st Space Symposium in Colorado Springs, and they had some nice displays here set up showing the future of their space station technology and all that comes with it. Always great to see a full-scale mock-up in action as they prepare the real ones for the Haven missions coming. Also, check this out. They've released a few neat glimpses of their new large docking adapter, and the perspective that they show here is exactly why a new standard is needed. Instead of the relatively tight docking ports that we are used to seeing today, this adapter features a much wider pressurized passageway using the same sort of ideas from the International Docking Adapter Standard. This is proposed as an open standard docking interface designed for much larger spacecraft. Similar to the International Docking Adapter Standard, this has soft capture actuators, petals, latches, and 12 hard capture powered bolts. It has a massive 2.9 meter diameter, and its androgynous docking design means that any two compatible vehicles or modules can dock together without needing separate active or passive sides. The result is this huge 6.6 square meter pressurized opening which can exist between vehicles in orbit, and that, by the way, is about 13 times the opening area of the International Docking Adapter. It's large enough for multiple crew members to move through at the same time comfortably, while also passing much larger cargo between vehicles and station modules. I think this is very cool and also a crucial part of their future Station 2, obviously, as they aim to connect large modules together, not just visiting spacecraft. Such docking ports are going to need to serve as permanent module-to-module connection points, and that is critical because VAST say that they want to support station architectures ranging from 2 modules to more than 20. On a related note, they even have Haven 1 interiors being built out right now. This is shelving going through quality inspections, and it's going to carry food, water, and other life support cargo for the future mission. They've also been showing off their new flight suits. They wanted to make something that is more comfortable to wear, but functional. It uses modern fabrics that provide protection to the occupants, and it has that aviation uniform feel to them, which I think is pretty awesome. Plenty of zippers and pockets to allow tool storage there, and they have hooks and loops on the legs for attaching stuff to. This is also you can move freely through the station while being able to largely keep your hands free. We have a fun week for Rocket Lab as well. We didn't get any official footage of their suborbital launch of another HASTE mission from Wallops early in the week, but as always, NSF to the rescue there. Next, they were back in New Zealand for a huge rideshare mission for JAXA launching on Thursday afternoon. As always, a breathtaking flight to orbit, but what was even more interesting in this mission was that there was 8 separate spacecraft on board. Packed between those fairings were educational small satellites, a demo satellite testing out ultra-small multispectral cameras, an ocean monitoring satellite, and a deployable antenna. Now that may have been the sweetest payload of all actually, because it is packed tightly like an origami masterpiece and unfolds in such a way with it ending up about 25 times its packed size. Rocket Lab has had a few big weeks actually. You may have spotted this post the other day showing their unique neutron hungry hippo fairing. Traditional rocket fairings are jettisoned to fall away to either be expended entirely or, in the case of Falcon 9, recovered with at least some additional expense. I can't wait to see this system that just stays attached to the first stage. Also, I highly recommend watching this in-depth discussion with CEO Peter Beck and Madison Malone, because Rocket Lab is now creating satellite thrusters and lasers in-house as demand accelerates with all those constellations coming. They've really become a powerhouse of development, and with their own electric thrusters to sell to others and indeed support Rocket Lab's own spacecraft, this is pretty awesome to see. I've got a link to that interview in the description for you. Finally, we have some huge news with the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope after watching a very inspiring conference midweek. The telescope is now in the final preparation stage, targeting an early September launch, and my, does it look beautiful. We are looking at millions of hours of work, taking more than a decade by NASA and all of the industry entities involved right down the line. What may be even more amazing is that this is 8 months ahead of schedule and under budget, which almost seems bizarre for any space-related project. The deployment tests have been done, and this gives you a nice perspective of how all those panels fold out. They've put it through the acoustic and vibration checks and then off to the thermal vacuum testing. I think the whole process is just fascinating, and of course, after all this testing, it needs a good clean to make sure that the mirror is ready for the actual mission. They combed over every inch of it to make sure that everything is inspected and ready to go. Then they joined the telescope to all of the outside components to complete the observatory. So there you have it. This is without doubt going to be one of the most impactful launches in 2026, and I've seen a number of comments asking why this telescope is going to be different from the others that have come before. This telescope is finally going to help answer a number of the biggest questions that we have. It could literally throw out a bunch of theories that may not be accurate. We've had this huge debate in science for decades over the ideas of dark matter, dark energy, and the structure of the universe. When it comes to trying to predict things on galactic scales, such as the orbits of stars around galaxies or even galaxies around clusters of galaxies, they often appear to move so fast that these systems should really be ripped apart. It's almost as if some sort of dark matter is creating that extra gravitational pull to keep galaxies glued together. Somehow, in spite of this extra space glue, the universe is also expanding as if some form of dark energy is trying to push everything apart. Nancy Grace should be able to rule out some possible reasons for these observations. Although it will have comparable resolution to the Hubble Space Telescope, it will have a field of view 100 times larger, so it will be able to map the structure of the universe much more effectively. Its other main objective is pushing the limits of exoplanet hunting from deep space. The telescope will be looking back at the same stars frequently enough to detect tiny changes in their orbits, and that will detect their system planets better than ever before. With that, it also carries a coronagraph that can detect planets 100 million times fainter than their parent stars. Unlike Hubble's or even James Webb's passive coronagraphs, Nancy Grace's actively compensates for the light coming from the parent star, effectively blocking it out to get direct observations of Jupiter-sized planets in our local stellar neighbourhood. For me, this will be the first thing to look out for. James Webb has teased a handful of direct observations to date, but this new telescope will be properly geared up for this task. It's worth noting that with future observation equipment to come later, it is also imperative that we know how this equipment behaves in deep space. Nancy Grace will be located at Lagrange Point 2 along with the James Webb Space Telescope so that it can always face away from the Sun and Earth's light. It shouldn't be long before we know which methods will be most viable for the next iteration of exoworld spotting telescopes. We are still just at the beginning of our journey to study the cosmos, and I've got to say, it is really great seeing it reach this point. So that's a nice way to end this week's coverage, I think. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit subscribe so we get to keep making them. If you want to continue with more space goodness, check out this video right here. Thanks for watching all this way through as always, and I'll catch you next weekend.